Hey everyone, plant-based eating, right? It's everywhere now.
Oh, yeah.
Seems like every time I turn around, there's a new plant-based burger
Yeah.
or cheese, like all these alternatives. I'm honestly impressed with all of the new creative options.
Oh, I know.
But it really got me thinking, how do we know if these things are healthy?
Right.
Like, just because it's plant-based, does that mean it's actually good for us?
Yeah, that's what we're diving into today.
Yeah, that's what we're going to be looking at today.
Unpacking that.
Exactly, unpacking it. So, with all these plant-based options out there, how can we figure out which ones are actually healthy?
Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head. It's exciting to see this big shift towards plant-based eating.
Yeah.
But we have to remember that just slapping a plant-based label on something doesn't mean that it's good for you.
It's like that, what is it? Don't judge a book by its cover.
Yeah.
We really need to get past the marketing and see what's in these products. And especially, I think, what they call ultra-processed.
Exactly. Ultra-processed isn't some trendy buzzword, though. It's an actual category in something called the Novier Food Classification System, which is used around the world. And it basically categorizes food by how processed it is.
Okay, so there's a system for this.
There is.
What makes a food ultra-processed then?
So ultra-processed foods have gone through some serious industrial processing.
Okay.
And they often have a ton of ingredients that you wouldn't use at home, like artificial flavors, colors, preservatives, basically additives to make them taste and feel a certain way that you just don't get naturally.
So even if it started with a plant, the final product might not be something you'd make at home.
Exactly. And that's where the confusion comes in with plant-based foods. Just because it's from a plant doesn't mean it's healthier, especially if it's been processed a ton.
That makes sense. Before we really get into it, though, can we talk about this plant-based boom? What is making plant-based products so popular right now? It's more than just taste, right?
You're totally right. It's way bigger than taste, though those plant-based burgers are getting good. Really, people are more aware of their health, their ethics, the impact on the environment, and the food companies. They're responding.
So it's more than a fad. This is sticking around.
Absolutely. The plant-based food market is growing like crazy. Get this, between 2018 and 2022, plant-based product launches went up by 302%. Globally.
Wow, 302%. That's not a trend, that's a movement. But like you were saying, just because it's plant-based doesn't mean it's good for you.
Right. I mean, usually when you see the benefits of a plant-based diet, things like lower risk of heart disease, type 2 diabetes, even some cancers, they're talking about whole plant foods. Fruits, vegetables, legumes, nuts, seeds, not the processed stuff.
Yeah, it's like going to the grocery store is so overwhelming these days. I see all these plant-based things, but then I look at the ingredient list, I'm like, do I even know what half of this stuff is?
And that's exactly it. People want to be healthy, but there are just so many options, and it's really hard to know where to even start, especially with all the plant-based stuff.
It's like you need a degree in food science just to buy groceries.
Right.
But that's why we're doing this. Today, we're going to get to the truth about ultra-processed plant-based foods and give you the knowledge to navigate those grocery store aisles. So let's get into it. Ultra-processed plant-based foods. What's the big deal?
Well, a big concern is they often have the same downsides as their, not plant-based versions.
Okay.
Added sugars, unhealthy fats, and a lot of sodium.
Wait, high sodium in plant-based foods. Didn't even think about that.
Right. You'd think it wouldn't be an issue, but
Yeah.
when you're ultra-processing, you lose some of the good stuff from the plants.
Uh-huh.
And to make up for the taste and how it feels, companies add stuff back in. Sodium, sugar, bad fats, trying to make it taste like the original, but then you're putting that stuff back in that you're trying to avoid.
So it's like those healthy-looking labels can be really tricking you. It's like that health halo. You just think it's all good, but then gotta flip it over and look at the ingredients. Right.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Those claims on the front, don't let them fool you. The ingredient list, that's where it's at.
Right. Speaking of ingredients, what about protein? There's all of these plant-based meats now, but is the protein the same?
Good question, and it's something a lot of people wonder about. Plant-based meats, a lot of them have a good amount of protein, but the quality can be all over the place.
What does quality even mean when we're talking protein? I thought protein was protein.
So protein is made of these things called amino acids, right?
Yeah.
And our bodies, they need all different kinds of amino acids to work right.
Okay.
But some plant proteins are incomplete because they don't have all 9 of the essential amino acids, or they don't have enough of them.
Oh yeah, I remember complete and incomplete proteins. Back in the day, everyone was worried about that with vegetarian diets.
Right.
But we don't need to go crazy pairing proteins at every meal, right?
No, not at all. Some plant proteins might be low in some of those amino acids, but you don't need them all in every single meal. Our bodies are smart. They can combine things throughout the day.
Oh, okay. Good to know. What about plant-based burgers? I've heard they can be iffy on some amino acids.
Yeah, there have been some studies that found certain plant-based burgers are low in a couple essential ones.
Okay.
Methionine and cysteine.
And those are important for...
Those have sulfur, and they're important for building muscle, repairing things, all sorts of functions. And in fact, they get low scores on something called the amino acid score.
Here's a score.
Yeah, basically it's how they measure how good the protein is.
So even if a burger says 20 grams of protein, we need to look deeper.
Yes, see what kind of protein it is, and check out that amino acid profile.
Got it. More knowledge for us. But this doesn't mean all plant-based options are bad, right?
Right. A lot of them actually add vitamins and minerals to them, to make them more like the animal product.
Oh, so they're fortified. I know they do that with plant milk, like for B12.
Yeah. Exactly. B12 is a big one, since you usually get that from animal products. You'll see calcium in plant milk too, and iron in plant-based meats, and zinc in some plant proteins.
Wow. Good to know they're trying to fill in the gaps there. When I was looking at the research, one thing that surprised me is that even when those vegan meals were super processed, they were still way higher in fiber than the meat ones that were processed.
Yeah.
Like 4 times higher.
That's wild.
Yeah.
It really shows you how complex this all is.
Yeah. It's not always so simple, so even with processing, there might be some benefits sticking around in those plant-based options.
Right.
Speaking of things that can be misleading, I think sometimes people think just because it's plant-based, that means it's healthy. Like you see those plant-based cookies and stuff,
Oh, yeah.
sodas,
For sure.
and you're like, those are probably full of sugar.
Right. That health halo gets you every time. Just because something's made with plants doesn't mean it's a free pass,
Yeah.
especially with the ultra-processing.
Right, exactly. Like, I can't just eat French fries because they're potatoes. But then, some people say to avoid all processed foods.
And that's where it gets tricky. Because processed doesn't always mean bad.
Okay.
It's not that simple.
So, are there good processed foods?
Think about frozen fruits and veggies.
Right.
Super easy, and they're good for you.
Yeah.
Or canned beans, those are processed,
Okay.
but they can be part of a healthy diet. It's the ultra-processed ones that we're really looking at today.
Okay, that makes sense. So not cutting out all processed foods, just being smart about it.
Exactly.
Before we get to our advice for everyone, I did want to go back to the plant-based meats. There were some things to watch out for, but I thought that research on the heart health benefits was really interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Yeah.
It seems like swapping out animal meat for those alternatives, even the processed ones, could be good for your cholesterol and your heart.
So maybe they're not perfect protein, but there are other benefits? Why is that?
We don't know for sure, and we need more research. But one idea is that it's about what plant-based meats don't have.
Yeah.
They don't have all that saturated fat and cholesterol that meat has. Plus, a lot of them have things like legumes, which are really nutritious on their own.
It all goes back to looking at the whole picture, right?
Right?
It's so important to stay informed and keep learning because there's always something new.
Absolutely. Things are always changing.
Okay, well, I think it's time to give everyone some advice. We've thrown a lot of information at them today, but what can they actually do?
Yeah, let's give them some tools. First thing, don't just trust the hype.
I know it's easy to see that plant-based label and think you're good to go,
Right.
but we've learned it's not always the case.
Read the labels every time. What are the ingredients? Any added sugar, too much sodium, bad fats, and usually less is more when you're looking at ingredients.
Right, less is more, and like you said earlier, choose those whole plant foods whenever you can.
Yes.
Yeah.
Real food first. Fruits, veggies, legumes, whole grains, that's the basis.
And if you're having processed plant-based stuff sometimes, just be aware of it.
Yeah.
Balance is key.
It's about balance.
Yeah.
Don't make it too hard on yourself. Small changes add up over time.
This whole deep dive has been really eye-opening.
Right.
There's so much more to plant-based eating than I thought.
It just shows that you should always keep learning and asking questions.
Absolutely. So for everyone listening, we'll leave you with a question to think about. If ultra-processed plant-based isn't the answer, then what role can it play in a healthy diet that's good for the planet?
Good question.
Something to think about. Until next time, eat well and be well, everyone.